Welcome to this presentation of using feedback to improve student success. My name is Rebecca Hoy, and today I'll share with you a research-proven method of helping your students find success in their online course. At the end of the presentation, my contact information is provided in case you have questions. Let's begin. Perhaps you've taken a class, whether face-to-face or online, where you invested a lot of time writing a paper, studying for a test, or working on a project, and the only thing you received back from your instructor was a grade. That's frustrating. You don't know where your points were lost, so you don't know how to do better next time. You might have wondered if you did very well, if the instructor just gave A's to everyone without even reviewing their work. That demotivates you to do your best in the future. All students want feedback on their work, both comments and a grade, because it helps them understand what they did well on and what they need to do to improve for the future. Not all feedback is created equally, however. The most effective feedback has specific characteristics, and we'll cover those in this presentation. For now, when we talk about how you will use feedback with your online students, we're defining it as information written by the teacher to the student about the student's progress toward the learning goals. There's so much research about the benefits of giving students feedback. It becomes even more important in online courses where the teacher can't address the entire class as a whole, where the student is often responsible for teaching himself the material, and where the student is isolated from others. In fact, in some types of online courses, feedback might be the only type of interaction a student has with their teacher or anyone at all. Not only can effective feedback significantly improve students' cognitive abilities, it can also help them to feel more connected to the teacher and the school. It can improve a student's belief that they can understand the material and can be successful in completing the course without the direct instruction from their teacher. It improves the number of students who complete the course and don't drop out. Last, it can significantly improve the students' feelings of satisfaction with their online experience. Let's talk about these outcomes a bit more. Perhaps the most obvious outcome of giving a student effective feedback is that it improves their understanding of the material. It focuses their attention on what they're doing well, so they know what to continue doing, and it points out areas they're struggling with. Sometimes when material is very new, students can't see patterns in their errors because they just don't understand the concepts well enough to detect that. A teacher's deep understanding of the content is necessary to find patterns of error, to point the patterns out to students, and then to help the student understand how to improve. When done well, feedback in online courses becomes a form of instruction. That's why it helps improve student achievement. As teachers of this generation of students, we know exactly how important communication is to them. They can send 3 text messages in the time it takes us to type 1. They do their homework while chatting with their friends in an instant messenger, and they have 500 friends on Facebook. We can't believe that isolation in an online course would meet their learning needs. When we provide our students with frequent feedback, we're opening a line of communication with them. That increased communication reduces their sense of disconnectedness and isolation. It tells the student we're very aware of their progress in the course and more, that we care about their progress in the course. Many surveys have given evidence that students' greatest need in an online class is interpersonal communication with their instructor. Effective feedback does not have to be highly time-intensive, but the investment of that bit of extra time it takes pays off in students who feel more connected with another person who cares about their progress. Feeling connected is a significant factor in whether a student completes or drops out of their online course. One of the primary concerns about online education is the dropout rate. Some programs face dropout rates of 40 to 60% of their students. If we want to continue to enjoy teaching in the online environment, And if we want our students to continue having the expanded opportunities that online education provides, we as teachers have to be concerned about retaining our students. Feedback improves retention in two important ways. As we discussed, the increased amount of interaction between the teacher and student reduces the student's feelings of isolation and disconnectedness. The student knows their teacher, and more, knows their teacher cares about their progress. Second, when teachers provide feedback, they're doing a better job of monitoring their online course. If students are working with online testing software like Respondus, and the software is grading their work, it can become easy for the teacher to be disconnected with the student's specific progress. They might know the student's overall grade at any point, but they may not know what a student continuously struggles with in order to help that student. In fact, they might not recognize a student is struggling until it's too late to help him. The student gives up because they feel like they can't understand the material on their own. A student's belief in their ability or their self-efficacy is critical to the success of online students, particularly those students in a self-paced course. Henry Ford once wisely stated, "Whether you believe you can do a thing or not, you're right." If a student believes they're not smart enough to teach themselves the material in the course, they're demotivated to work hard to try. They don't believe their effort will result in success. Because of that, they give up quickly. Feedback comes into play here because it can be used to encourage students with low self-efficacy. In fact, when students are taught that their success comes from their effort and not from some fixed innate ability they were born with, they become more successful in school. They work harder when faced with something challenging because they've been taught that hard work will pay off in improved understanding. A teacher's focused feedback at self-efficacy improves the likelihood a student will successfully complete an online course, particularly if the content is perceived as difficult by the student. At the conclusion of every online course, students are asked to complete a student satisfaction survey. If you look at the data collected from those, you'll find that student satisfaction in a course is directly linked with their interpersonal communication they shared with the instructor. Students feel more satisfied in courses where their teacher was interactive with them. Student satisfaction is particularly important in online courses where the student is more likely to drop out because they feel disconnected, or because they begin to feel they aren't smart enough to learn the material on their own. Our feedback to our students increases our interactions with them. It shows them we care about their progress, and in turn, it improves their satisfaction with their experience. Believe me when I say, however, that not all feedback is created equal. In fact, some feedback can do more harm than good, and you might be surprised by the kind of feedback that's one of the worst culprits. Let's look at the 4 characteristics of effective feedback. 1. It's standards-based. 2. It's instructional. 3. It's positive. And 4. Effective feedback is timely. When you write feedback to your online student, you should direct your attention to the learning outcomes covered in the assessment, and not just the lesson or unit number they completed. Telling a student they did well with Lesson 12 or that they struggled with Lesson 12 doesn't provide them with any information they didn't already know. It's imperative that you review each missed problem in an assessment, especially if it's been graded by the computer, in order to understand what the student did well on and what they're struggling with. In your feedback, you then explain to the student that they demonstrated understanding of learning outcome X and Y, but it appeared they had difficulty with learning outcome Z. Once you've identified any learning outcomes or specific steps the student's struggling with, Your feedback should offer some type of brief instruction to help the student understand the error and to make corrections. This does not have to be elaborate. In fact, you might simply explain what concept they appeared to struggle with and provide a web link to supplemental material to help them. If you can see the student totally misunderstands the learning outcomes in the assessment, your feedback won't be as effective as reteaching the content. The instruction provided in feedback should be enough to help them help themselves. It may seem obvious that your feedback to students should be positive, but what might surprise you is that this is one area you have to be very careful about. Encouragement and praise are different. If you praise your students, writing things like, "very smart," your students will turn their attention to themselves as people and not to their success on their work. As we talked about with self-efficacy, you want your students to believe their success hinges on their effort, not their ability. Many times I've seen teachers provide general feedback like, "great job," or "well done," but the student doesn't know what they did great with, aside from achieving a good score, and therefore they won't know what to repeat on future performances of work. Be positive, be encouraging, but always be specific about what they did well with. If they didn't do well, encourage them to give more effort, because that will result in improvement. Last, effective feedback is timely, and this might be the most challenging for our online teachers. While many people believe feedback is important, they also believe they don't have time for it. Remember, though, that in place of the lecture or class activities you would have had to spend your time preparing for in a live class, your feedback is where your time shifts when teaching online. Your feedback becomes part of the instruction that's missing. In order for your feedback to make any difference at all, it has to be given close enough in time that the student did the material so it's still fresh in their minds. They haven't moved on to entirely new material or no longer care about the old material, and they can apply your feedback to make improvements on future work. Try to have feedback on formative assessment back to your students within 48 hours, and feedback on bigger summative assessment back to your students within 7 days. When you write your feedback, try for the Oreo approach. That is, start with something positive, then fill it in with information, and last, close it with something positive. Here are 2 examples of feedback that are not effective. First, you got 30 out of 36 correct. Review the ones you missed, and let me know if you have questions. Why isn't this effective? It doesn't give the student any information they didn't already know, and it isn't even encouraging. There's no purpose in this feedback, and it doesn't even really sound like an invitation for student questions. Here's another. Great work! Before you know it, you'll be done with class. Why isn't this effective? Well, the tone was positive. It doesn't give the student any useful information about what was great. In fact, if they earned 30 of 36 points, they missed almost 20% of the questions, so their work wasn't even really that great. That makes this false praise. The student doesn't know anything more after reading this than they did before. You wouldn't even have to have had reviewed their work to write it. Now look at this one. I'm happy to see you completed Lesson 4, Joe. You're right where you should be in class. In reviewing your work, it appears you have solid understanding of the point-slope form. You can identify the slope of the line, select an ordered pair, and set up the equation correctly. I noticed in problems you missed that you're having difficulty with the equations that include adding or subtracting fractions. Please review the attached document on adding and subtracting fractions, paying close attention to how to find the least common denominator. I know you'll see improvements on your unit test with this concept if you give some effort to reviewing fractions. Let me know how I can help. Notice that this is based on standards. It offers some instruction and it's positive. Like the Oreo approach, it starts and ends with something positive and it has information inside it. Did it take me longer to write this feedback than the previous two? Certainly. You wouldn't even have to look at the student's work to write the other two. However, which has the potential to improve student learning? Which demonstrates genuine care about a student's progress? The last one, of course. It took me 2 minutes to write it, but this type of feedback, given consistently throughout the course, could make every difference in student achievement, retention, self-efficacy, and satisfaction. I want you to think of this type of feedback as sipped, like the drink that accompanies the feedback. It's standards-based. It's instructional. It's positive. And it's timely. I'm including my contact information. If you have questions on how to write effective feedback, I hope you'll contact me. I look forward to seeing the results of your effort.